everybody's agreed at the little factoring conferences, like, let's keep this party rolling, like let's keep making money and buying yachts and shit. And I think that like we've showed up and people are like, dude, get these guys the fuck out of this room. So I think that it is like very interesting. Like we are absolutely hated in factoring, but it is kind of fun to be like the villain in their world and then be like the hero in like our carrier's world, which is like, I think, incredible.
Our special guest is Taylor Monks with BasicBlock.
Hello.
One of the founders. BasicBlock is a freight factoring company.
Yeah, that's the easiest way to say it, yes.
Yes.
Is this going to be recorded and like published? Or is this like just for internal?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I need to know that before.
Yep. Okay.
Great.
Yes. You are.
I need to know that way before.
Yeah.
Great.
So BasicBlock is a freight factoring company. We'll kind of get into what factoring is a little bit later into the talk here, but I think it's helpful to start with some context on where BasicBlock is right now. I know, super exciting time. You guys just raised a massive round, closed the round at the beginning of this year. How much did you raise? Kind of where you're at with the traction?
Yeah, so we raised $78 million. I think we technically raised it last year. We didn't announce it though. We're pretty bad at that. So we've actually raised more money, but we haven't announced that either. So we raised $78 million. I think it was like November of last year. It went live like in the middle of January, something like that. We're pretty little, so we're like 25 employees. So that means we all make a lot of money. Just kidding, we don't at all. We're all broke. I think we're like 25-ish, somewhere right around there. I'm not sure. We've hired quite a lot of people lately. And then we work with carriers, thousands of carriers across the country. Really kind of no geographic region center, just everywhere, really. We do their payments and banking and lending to those guys.
Awesome. That's just fantastic. As somebody who's a part of the ecosystem, pretty much everyone here is either in it or interested in the ecosystem of entrepreneurship in Nebraska. It's just fantastic to see a Nebraska company be able to raise, large rounds of funding, be able to grow and scale, and really get to the point where you're at right now.
Yeah, we've had it wasn't as easy as like, here's $78 million. It was way worse than that. But we've had a good time especially in the last 2 years, as we've honestly, COVID, this sounds probably really insensitive to say, but COVID was like the best thing that could have happened to us. We didn't go, and regardless of political belief, whatever, we didn't go home. Like we stayed in office, and that was like a conscious decision that I made because we were in this like wartime, like figure it the fuck out or die. And we just didn't go home, and that resulted in us, growing aggressively, like so fast that it was unbelievable. And now that we've done that, we're, I know Grant really well from Crescent. Our group of guys and girls were like really close together. So we pretty much lived together in COVID. And now we have even an apartment in Chicago that we all like live at. So yeah, that like stretch of time was super important for us to figure out and find product market fit. And we have it really strong now, which is part of the reason we got a lot of funding, obviously.
Yeah. So let's take a few steps back and get into just a little bit of background to lead us into kind of finding that product market fit. You moved to Nebraska. You're not, a Nebraska native. You moved to Nebraska at a pretty young age. What were you like as a kid? Were you always into computers, blockchain, that kind of technology?
Yeah, so my granddad, who lives in Spain now, he was on the Hubble Space Telescope launch team and then helped like program nuclear warheads for the American government. And then, he had done some stuff with banks and some stuff like that. So I'd always like been around it from like a young age. I should also mention I've never taken $1 from a single family member ever. My mom maybe would like $20 for gas when we were like super broke, and she doesn't let me forget that. But I think I was always interested in technology, and I was definitely a troublemaker. So I was interested in things that I could do to get an advantage and whatever I could. And then I think as I grew up, that's definitely stayed true. And then as I learned, even now today in our company, like I'm like the least adult CEO probably ever. Like we have like my assistant is like pretty much my mom. So it's like very complicated, but I think that type of like mentality of like very scrappy, do things that you probably shouldn't, that aren't PC, like it's worked for us, and it's kind of worked probably my whole life like that. I'd say my mom wanted me to be a lawyer because I would always argue with her, so maybe that's like part of it. But yeah, I don't know that I ever I didn't know what entrepreneurship was. In fact, I remember my mom. I'd like dropped out of college, and I was at the time like talking to this girl. And my mom was like, what are you going to tell our parents that like you do? Like you dropped out of college, you live in your mom's basement, you're an entrepreneur. Like all you need is like a full sleeve tattoo, and like you check every box of like undateable. And like I was like, yeah, you're right. Like you're definitely right. So I think that like I never like thought, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur. I think it just kind of like happened. I just saw a problem and then started like obsessing over that problem. And then obviously it kind of got us to here.
You bet. So I want to pull on something there. So college dropout. You went to Nebraska Westland, ended up dropping out, and that, my understanding is that kind of became the impetus for starting BasicBlock. Not overnight, but kind of started a chain reaction that resulted in starting a company.
Yeah, so I was really into cryptocurrency around like 2013, 2014. And then I had made some money at like 70, 80 grand in Bitcoin. And as like a 22-year-old, I was like, I have $1 billion. So
super rich.
Yeah, I was like, I am rich. I think like at that moment I had that money, and I was I was a international finance, like international business, international finance major. And I was writing white papers on cryptocurrency and actually the implications in international trade. So like payments and logistics, I guess you could say. And my teacher failed me on a project, on a paper. And her argument was that this like was supposed to be a like factual paper, and mine was opinion. And I thought this could be real. Like this seems like it should be real. So she failed me, and then I pretty much dropped out like 24 hours after that, and then moved to London with my dad, who lives there still, and slept on his couch and started thinking about what I wanted to build. I joke with a lot of our investors and like investors I talk to that aren't from here. And, I say like Nebraska really only has 3 things, and that's corn, college football, and trucks. And I picked trucks to work in. The actual true story of how it happened is after I dropped out of college, moved to London, came back, I'd like not run out of money, but I spent way too much money in London partying. I came back to Nebraska, and my mom picked me up from the airport in Omaha here. She lived in Oakland, Craig, so like an hour or so, northwest of here. Mm-hmm. And we were driving out the North Way, and there's a bunch of like U.S. foods and trucking companies there. And my mom was pretty much screaming at me, like, you just dropped out of college, you're moving to my basement, you broke up with your girlfriend who's like going to be a doctor, and like you're playing with the currency that you can't even explain to anyone. She's like, what are you going to do? And I just looked out the window, and there were some trucks there, and I was like, I'm going to work with trucks. She was very quick to point out at that moment that I knew absolutely nothing about trucks. And she was right. I knew nothing about trucks. But that like kicked off this entire 2 years of exploring like what it was like to be a truck driver, and then finding ultimately the problem that we were solving, which is cash flow.
Yeah. And so, basically you knew nothing about trucking, which is kind of a pretty complex, archaic, business. And so as a young guy, you're going in and you have to basically learn everything.
Yeah, I think there was like an advantage for us though. In some sense, I think that knowing nothing about a problem gives you no preconceived notion of how it should be solved. So there was like a little bit of that. But yeah, so I originally started out interviewing trucks at truck stops along Interstate I-80. And then that led to me, then there was a point where I was really not making money. I was doing Solarion studies, like clinical research trials, to like basically stay alive with like money. And my mom, I'd literally have to like Shark Tank my mom every morning to like give me $20 to like go to a meeting. And then I would show up to that meeting early and get a water. So that way, and I figured out that if I showed up early and got a water, that like if the person showed up after me, they'd always offer to buy me a coffee, so I didn't have to buy them a coffee. So I'd like get there early enough and then not have to buy a coffee because I didn't have the money to buy a coffee. So I would like, we were so broke, and I think at one point my mom like, you know, was like, I'm gonna start charging you rent to like live in my basement. And I was like, no, please don't. So I then started to hatch the idea of like, I got to get out of this house. So I started talking to truck drivers, and then I started to like hitchhike with truck drivers. So I like got in trucks and cabs with trucks and drove thousands of miles with truck drivers. And that point in time was like probably the most pivotal point in our company's history. I say that now, but there were so many pivotal points along the way. That was like a really big one where we learned, or I learned specifically just exponentially about like what it actually was fundamentally like to be a trucker. And that customer centric, like, you know, way that we are, I think is carried on to like why we're good at what we do now, probably.
So I assume during that time, you know, you kind of start understanding what freight factoring actually is. Yeah. Just give us like a layman's terms. What is factoring? So factoring is really like a payday loan, candidly, but with like terrible customer service and like terrible technology and like no automation. But what happens is 93% of the trucking market are trucking companies that are less than 8 trucks. So mom and pop trucking companies. Those trucking companies get this downward pressure from shippers like Amazon, Walmart, or whoever it is. And basically what happens is because they are publicly traded companies, they want to control their cash flow. So they say, we're not going to pay you for 30 to 45 days. And for an operator as a super cash intensive business of trucking and fuel, like they can't withstand that. So like factoring, I kind of say is a necessary evil in supply chain logistics. So what we do is we come in and purchase those invoices that they've already hauled. And this is like the very easiest way to explain it. We purchase the invoices that they've hauled. And then we advance them capital and take a little bit of the percentage to do that. On top of that, though, we're like their entire back office. So we invoice, we collect, we settle, we pay. We can pretty much do their taxes now. And we do all of that soon for free, which is kind of crazy. That's why. But we're basically saying factoring is a commodity, and you should be able to get paid for free instantly, same day, which is why a lot of large partners want to work with us now. And it's, you know, that's pretty pivotal because my understanding is most truck drivers are, I mean, the truck companies of 6 or less. Yeah, so it's really like pretty small operations. It's really big. So it's interesting now because we work with such these small carriers, but we've taken this. It's kind of like crazy, you know. I always compare it to Robinhood. When Robinhood went to commissionless trading, you pretty much had to go to commissionless trading or you died. Like it became the new standard. Well, we're one of the only factoring companies in the world right now that is paying truck drivers for free and instantly. And that is like really scary to our competitors, which there's 310 of them out there in the United States that their business models are solely relying on, I'll give you capital early and then I get to make money off that capital. But now, like, you know, I listened to this podcast the other day. There used to be there used to be a few different business models where you could give it away for free and then make ads, right? Like you could charge for the software and it's SaaS. And now there's like this third category that's kind of happened, which is embedded finance. So like I can give it away for free and I can be your bank. And it's interesting. And there's actually probably a lot of people in this room, I think, that go to Starbucks often. I guarantee most of you have some money in your Starbucks wallet. Well, Starbucks is actually like the 5th largest bank in like the world. And you'll notice over the last like 5 to 6 years that Starbucks coffee, it used to be, but now if you go to a Starbucks, it's just Starbucks. And that's because like they've pivoted themselves into this like financial ecosystem where like actually they make so much money, not on the coffee, they make it on your like finances that are sitting in like the wallet and they're lending that money out. So like that's kind of like what we do too, in a way, is we capture their spend and then we actually have just ungodly amounts of deposits that we can leverage and do all different things that we want to. And we're actually unregulated, which is kind of wild. That's actually probably a problem, to be honest, but it's a whole nother discussion. So in your travels, you're hitchhiking, you're thumbing rides with truck drivers. How did you land on factoring? I mean, there's so many pieces to that business. Yeah, so I think I thrive in like complex businesses. I think that's why college just wasn't for me. Like I think anyone that's gone to school, once you figure out how to get an A or write a paper, it's like pretty easy. So you just like do it over and over and over and over and over. It is whatever.
But so supply chain, it's like there's always an exception to the rule. Always a fucking exception. You can't. It's so hard to build software because it's like, well, we automate this, but then what happens with this happen and this happen? It's just like a rabbit hole. I think that I always say that like I looked for like the bleeding at the throat problem. So like what was just like keeping them up at night and like killing them inside. And it was just like money. They needed money faster. So like when I saw that, it was like, it seemed very obvious to me. I think, a lot of the good old boys that have been doing factoring for a long time here, like they've just been having a party and nobody's like kind of like said, let's, everybody's agreed at the little factoring conferences, like, let's keep this party rolling, like let's keep making money and buying yachts and shit. And I think that like we've showed up and people are like, dude, get these guys the fuck out of this room. So I think that it is like very interesting. Like we are absolutely hated in factoring. But it is kind of fun to be like the villain in their world and then be like the hero in like our carrier's world, which is like, I think incredible. So yeah, we learned about it and it's just really like, they just needed money faster. And we're like, all right, let's just do that. So we used to say like, we just pay truckers faster. That was it. And like VCs used to be like, simple enough. I'm like, yeah, it's not that, I mean, it's hard, but it's not that hard. It's just like, we're like, I think a lot of startups are like, we provide actionable insights to individuals that need the insights. It's like, what does that even mean? It's like, we just pay truckers fast. That's about it. So that's like what we said. It's a lot more complex than that. And we do a lot more than that. But like when I meet somebody like, oh, what do you do? I'm like, oh, we just pay truckers. Like, that's about it. And if they want to know more, then I'll tell them more.
Sure. I speak to a lot of entrepreneurs through BSO, just, trying to find entrepreneurs who have innovative ideas. There's a lot of ideas happening in the logistics space. I think COVID, like you said, was kind of a fuel to the fire for that industry. And what I've seen is a lot of companies, a lot of ideas are trying to be an end-to-end solution. I'm going to be everything to everyone in this industry. Do you think that focusing on one specific area has been kind of a superpower in a way?
Yeah. So if people would have gave us money in the beginning, we would have died because we weren't focused enough. Now sometimes I think like we can get a little broad sometimes, but it's like in all the same ecosystems. So my view on it is like just do one thing really, really well, and that's like it. And if you can fundamentally do that, like if you can fundamentally just make one really good fucking cookie, then people are gonna like you for that just one cookie, and then the other ones are like, yeah, we go here for this, and then they like there's some other ones, right? Like and I think a lot of businesses start out that way. Like Amazon was books, Zappos, it was shoes, right? Like there's a lot of businesses that just do one thing really well early on, and they start to branch off. Because supply chain is so complex and there is always everybody trying to do everything, we make it very clear to our partners, like upfront, you guys do this, here's our roadmap, this is what we're gonna do. We don't wanna touch what you wanna do. Like, let's make that very clear. We're not going to go do this, and we're happy to sign exclusive agreements to do that. And I think we win a lot of deals for that, like, openness and honestness of, like, this is how we do business and how we want to do it and how we would like to do it with you. We don't want to touch these other things. And part of that is because in supply chain it is so complex. If you start to do those other things, like I mentioned earlier, there's always an exception to the rule. So building software for, like, these other products is really complex. And we have enough problems ourselves just, like, solving payment. So we just do that. And we, like I said, we're very upfront about that to our customers, our clients, our partners, whoever it is.
Mm-hmm. So is that, I mean, that feedback, that initial feedback, you rode thousands of miles with truckers, and presumably hundreds of hours on the road with them. Probably time you think about often. I'm sure as you're continuing to grow and scale, that's something that doesn't scale.
Yeah,
I mean, you can't as the
you'd be surprised
CEO.
Like,
that's like you can't just go out and ride with the truck.
You'd be surprised. Like I get in pretty heated arguments with our board when I don't get to do what I want to do. At this stage of the business, I think like I still fundamentally can just do whatever I want. Like that's probably really terrible to say, but our VCs don't care. Like they're like, just lead us to the promised land. You got us here. Whatever the fuck you want to do, just keep doing that, right? So yeah, I do whatever I want. Like like a few weeks ago, I was like flipping burgers at a truck stop. Like we asked a truck stop to like see if we could just cook burgers out in the parking lot. We just like pulled up a grill and we're like, free burgers for anybody that like wants to give us feedback on the product. And I was definitely the one that was flipping the burgers. I was hanging out and doing whatever. So yeah, it might not be like we're jumping in a truck and driving, thousands of miles anymore, but we still find really creative ways to like talk to our customers. In fact, every week we do. So in product, all the engineers, which I think is really great. I think everybody should do this. Engineers demo their features that they built the week prior. So on Friday, they come in, we huddle the entire team. The engineers, it's actually really great because engineers like aren't typically, no offense, they're not great at like talking in front of groups. So they get the opportunity to come in and demo their work and show the entire company their work for 30 minutes. Everybody demos just like rapid fire, which is great because in technology, like everything breaks. So like it's always fun to see like an engineer when they're demoing and it's like not working what they built. So it's like it's awesome. And they're like, yeah, now you know what it fucking feels like for us when we're trying to demo investors. So it's like a good time. They demo and then we go into feedback. And typically what happens is about every other Friday, I'd say every Friday the entire team is there, but every other Friday we'll invite truckers. So truckers will like zoom in. Now that they're like familiar with COVID and like Zoom, they like zoom in and like there these truckers are on Zoom watching our demos and our engineers demo and like then those truckers like give us direct feedback and it's like, yeah, tell us what you want to see. Like, what is it? Is it good enough? Is it not good enough? What is breaking? And they tell us and then we write it down and it gets put into the backlog and then it likely gets shipped the next week and it gets like figured out. So we found other creative ways to still keep that like customer centric like model. In fact, there was a few weeks ago, we had a trucker that was like driving through Lincoln and came into our office and we were at an all hands meeting and I wasn't there. I was on Zoom. But Cole, who's really become like my right-hand man, he like left the meeting. And everybody was like really offended that he left the meeting. And for whatever reason that like just drove me up the wall that like I had to call an all hands meeting and be like, if any of you ever fucking complain again, like that he left this meeting to go talk to a customer that was here in our office, you're gone. Like that is just like, it was toxic to me. I couldn't believe it. And I was like sick by it. And I think that like, I really appreciate Cole because he's been with me for so long and understands our customers that like he left and got up and he was like, he didn't feel like he did the wrong thing, but there were like other individuals that were like, wow, I can't believe Cole just like bail like on our meeting. And it was like, dude, who fucking cares about your bullshit meeting? Like about this button that's like blue or yellow. Like we should talk to the customer that's in the office. So we've like kept that really close to us. And it's something that like is celebrated at BasicBlock, not at all shied away from. And it's very clear that, when our customers are in the office or when they're here, like they are the reason that we get to have a cool office and drink beer on, 2:00 on Wednesdays and whatever we do. It's like, this is why we make money. So we should give them our full attention when they're here or when we're working with them.
So, early on, thinking about those early stages as you're getting customer feedback, and if you were to sit here and give advice to some of the other entrepreneurs in the room to go and start getting that feedback, where's the first place you start?
Well, just call your customer. I don't know. I mean, like, I think a lot of people want to make an excuse of like, oh, how do I do it? Let's read 20 books and figure it out. And like, let's create an awesome spreadsheet and chart it. It's like, dude, who fucking cares? Like, just like, you probably don't have enough customers to like really fundamentally like get any data to learn from if you're early. Like, just one person is fine. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, if you have, 2 or 3, great. Like, go talk to them. I think Paul Graham said it really well where Airbnb was like in Silicon Valley and, they were like working in Silicon Valley and he's like, where are your customers? And they're like, well, the majority of them are in New York City. And he was like, why are you here? Like, go to New York. Like, get on a plane. See you later. And I think that like my advice is like, you can always create an excuse not to call your customer, but calling your customer is just like fundamentally the only thing that's like the right thing to do. And that's worked for us. Like we still, like if we're in a meeting and like in a heated debate, like it'll turn into like it'll almost be like a threat. Like I'll call one of our customers right now, I swear to God, and I'll be right.
Do you do that?
Hell yeah, we do. Oh yeah, our
and
office is toxic as shit. I tell you what, we are like, it is a big battle. And yeah, I mean, straight in the meeting, it's like, yeah, do it right now. Call him, I dare you. And it's like, all right, get him on the phone and then ask him a question. And then next thing you know, it's like everybody's huddled around the phone asking their questions because now it's like we know this person's right, but it's not about basically it's not really about being right or wrong. It's just like I think it's just fundamentally like everybody believes in it so much that they're like, dude, this is like we're supposed to be doing. And then, yeah, so we'll do that all the time. I mean, it's just It's the easiest, fastest way to answer a problem that you don't know the answer to, probably yourself, unless you are the user.
So you've gone on, you've raised a couple rounds of funding. You've gone to Silicon Valley, raised money through Jason Calacanis, who's very esteemed angel investor. As you're going, getting that feedback, initial traction, really trying to hone in on product market fit, kind of where's the sweet spot to start even broaching those conversations with investors?
Now, like whenever, I think Jason has this like Goldilocks zone of like what he wants to see out of an individual. But like when he wrote us a check, I think we had maybe one user at the time. So we were not in the Goldilocks zone at all. The reality is like investors bet, you've heard this all before. It's not the horse, it's the jockey. So like the majority of them invest in like founders to figure it out. In fact, when Jason Calacanis, which like you said is like, he's statistically, I think like the greatest investor, one of the greatest angel investors of all time. I think if not he is like statistically definitely top 3. Like he wrote me a $100K check, and I'm not shitting you when I say in 7 days we got like sued by a development shop and we lost it all. Like, and I had to like call the best angel investor of all time and be like, hey, that $100K you gave me? Like, yeah, it's gone. And he was like, all right, great. What's the plan? And I was like, whoa, that's it? Like, not going to yell at me? He's like, no, what's the point of yelling? It's gone. It's like, let's just figure it out. So I think that like, yeah, they're really helpful, man. Like, I think that people are like, oh, I'm too early, whatever. And I think that, some are. I think it depends on the business. I think it depends on the founder. I think consumer, you got to be a little bit farther along, maybe. But it's like a lot of timing, and it's a numbers game. I think like you got to talk to at seed probably, or angel, probably 200 people. But there's money to be had out there. And in fact, I know this guy named Ollie. He's from like, I don't even know where he's from, to be honest. I have no idea. New York? Who knows? Not from here. And he's raised $8 million. Keep in mind, I've raised $0 from, that's not true. We've raised $275,000 from Nebraska, I think in total. Early stage, an angel that's just a really good friend of mine. And then Invest Nebraska, we let in early on. Now, we didn't have to, but we did because I like Ben Williamson. He's a good dude. But we couldn't get $1 from Omaha or Lincoln, Nebraska. And this dude raised $8 million in Omaha alone. Like this dude not from here. And he was like, yeah, all my investors are Omaha. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's like, that is not true. And he's like, no, I've raised $8 million here. I was like, holy shit. And when he tells a story, I think now it's from Houston. He's from Houston, or was. He tells a story. He's like, yeah, I paraded up and down Houston, and like nobody would give me $1. I come to Omaha, and they write me a $2 million check on the spot. Like sometimes, like it's the classic thing. Like when you go on vacation or whatever, like the girls aren't as hot in Nebraska as they are in Arizona. Like, but they're the same. And honestly, in Nebraska, they're pretty good looking. But it's like, it's just like you look better when you're not here and you're like not from the city. So it's like sometimes like raising here, if you can't do it, then just leave. Like leave, build the business here because the operational like cost of living here is so cheap, and hiring is what it is at this point. You can hire operations really cheap here, not engineers. But yeah, like I mean, my advice is like early on, just don't. If you're not the good looking girl in the backyard, just fucking go to a different backyard. Like go somewhere else and go raise somewhere else. You'd be surprised at like the people that you'd meet and help. And Silicon Valley is really dense. It's a great spot to do that. Though if you can't pitch or you don't know how to pitch, I will help you. But like we get compared to a lot of Silicon Valley companies, or like somebody would say like you act and pitch like a Silicon Valley company. Like we know how to pitch. We've trained and learned how to do that. But I see a lot of Nebraska founders that like don't know how to do that. So it's like it takes, I can have like a 30-minute call with you and I can rip you apart. And I'll actually, in fact, most oftentimes I pitch your deck to you before you even pitch it to me. So I'll like pitch it to you and I'm like, if I can't read and pitch your deck, it's probably not good enough. And this is how like you should pitch it. And I'll kind of like on the fly do it. Like, yeah, that's my advice. I mean, if you don't know if you can't get money here, just get on a plane and go somewhere else and raise money somewhere else. New York, Silicon Valley, Houston, Austin, Chicago. You can stay at my apartment in Chicago. If you go to Chicago, I don't care. But yeah, it's like, it's just, sometimes you're just people in Nebraska, and this is anywhere, people in your own city, I should say, just they don't believe you.
Is that an open invite?
You can do whatever you want. We have a great apartment in Chicago, Grant's been in. We're welcome. If you want to come and meet investors in Chicago, you are happily, that is an open invite to anyone here. You are happily, if you don't have the money to stay in a hotel, you can stay in my apartment, I don't care.
So you have successfully raised some money. Kind of where are you going from here? We started about talking about how Starbucks is, basically a massive bank now. Other than a coffee company, you started as a freight factoring company. Where do you see BasicBlock going from here?
Yeah, so I think I've had I don't know if it's luxury. I don't know how to call it luxury, but the opportunity to think like, what is my legacy going to be? And I think about it in terms of when I'm gone and like BasicBlock is maybe dead. Who knows? Like, I don't know. Whatever. Let's call it 100 years, and I'm gone and everybody's gone and nobody at the team is like, what fundamentally can I point back to and be like, yeah, we did that. Like what point in time? And I think that we're on the cusp of that now to be one of we will be the first company in the world to pay a truck driver instantly for free and actually be profitable and make revenue from these other sources. And when we do that, which we've already done, but when we do it at scale, which we're close, but not, I mean, we're all relative. I'd say maybe like a year-ish or so. You never know. When we get to that point, that moment will fundamentally change supply chain logistics forever. Like I can point to a day on a calendar and be like, we did this, and you either got to innovate or you're dead. Like all 310 companies that are now looking at us and be like, oh shit. And I think a lot about that. I think about like that moment on that date on that calendar that we can do that at a global or continent type scale. But in terms of like, where we're at today, right? Like we're more and more becoming a bank and starting to underwrite and extend credit in all these different unique ways to carriers across the country that help them grow and help build capacity to move goods for everybody like us, which I think is something that I don't know that I would have felt amazing about 4 years ago, but I feel really good about it now that we have an awesome part in that. We have so much of a part in that like the Department of Transportation, like what's his name, Buttigieg. Like, in fact, like when we go to Arlington or DC, we have a few investors there. Like they want to meet with us and be like, how can we help? Or like, what can we do? And I think that's like a really cool position to be in. That's like, wow, like us dudes and girls from Nebraska, like are in a position where we like fundamentally like can help the economy, especially in a time where it really needs it right now, which is cool.
That is fascinating. I have a ton more questions, but I do want to open it up to the group. And just do a little Q&A. So if you have a question, please just raise your hand. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Colwell. Fascinating. Congratulations. Love the whole story. How do you decide how many customers have to give you feedback before you make that change? Or is it instantaneous? You're kind of in the, we're going to please everybody.
That's a great question. So you should do an NPS score, right? Anything below 40 is like statistics. Anything below 40, which we just did ours today, it was 96%. So anything below 40, I know is pretty pumped. I actually got that like 2 seconds ago, that's why I know. Which I was hyped up about it. Anything below 40, if they're like, I can't remember, I'll tell you the exact wording that our product person told me, but anything below 40, you don't have product market fit. Anything above is great. You're going to be successful. You can build a scalable business. I think that's a good metric, like to determine how much they like and don't like you at the end of the day. And then I think my job as the CEO is to consistently and always take feedback from not only the market, but individuals I meet in these events, and then also our customers and like new and other businesses. Like, so I spend a lot of time reading like S1s and 10Ks of publicly traded companies now that are like similar, but not competitive with us. And I think that ultimately it's like, there's got to be a belief in terms of like, where do we fundamentally believe the market's going to be so we can meet it when it gets there? And you got to make the choices to do that along the way. Like, in fact, early on, I felt so strongly about factoring companies. A lot of people don't know this. In our board meeting, I risked my job. I said, this will be right. I know it will be right. And if it's not right, I'll quit. I'll resign and you can hire a new CEO. And it was right. And even then again, only probably 2 years ago, I said, we need to start building banking for trucking companies. And this is what they're going to want based on just like my gut feeling in the market and what I thought. They were not asking for that. If you would have asked, users when Steve Jobs was building the iPhone, they just said, I just wanted a flip phone. They never said the iPhone. And now, in fact, today in our NPS survey that I got, a carrier, I saved the image. A carrier said this today. I think if BasicBlock had an account that you could ACH to different bank accounts, it would put you guys in a monopoly in factoring. So instead of depositing into a bank account, it would be a BasicBlock account that will allow the individual to ACH to multiple accounts, right? So we have a carrier today in an NPS survey with nothing. He has no idea what we're doing or that we're building this, or in fact that he actually has a bank account today and he just doesn't know it. They're asking for a product that like they just are starting to think about, and we're already like in front of that. So I think customer feedback's important, but like it's always actually where's the market gonna be, right? And I think that the truest statement is the Steve Jobs statement of if you would have asked the individual what they wanted, they said another flip phone, but he built the iPhone, and now I bet 90% of us have an iPhone. So I think that it's like there's part of that. I think on a feature basis you should listen to them consistently, but ultimately like there's some just like research and having a billion conversations to just kind of know and feel where it should go that is like probably more important sometimes than the customer. I don't know. It's a very, very, very unique balance. It's a good question though, to be honest.
So you talked about you pitch Silicon Valley style, which I will say that Taylor's been nice enough to our pitch deck and pitch it back. It was extremely helpful. So he's not kidding when he says he's willing to do that. You should take him up on it. But in your mind, what are the top 2 or 3 things that it needs to pitch Silicon Valley versus next year to Omaha? Or just describe it.
The top 2 or 3 things that a Silicon Valley investor looks for. I think it's so hard. It's like hard to put myself back in their shoes because we just had nothing. So it's like I would say growth, but I don't even know that we had that. I think vision and big market, right? Like we always had this vision of being the bank, and just a lot of people are like, this is crazy. Like there's just no way. And even now, like Nelnet, who's one of our investors, like I talk with Jeff Nordhook like every day, and he's like, dude, you're psycho like for doing this. And I'm like, yeah, but you'd give me a job if this failed. He's like, yeah, probably. I think like, vision of like where it's going to go, kind of like what we were talking about earlier, of like, how do we meet the market where it's at instead of just going with the market, right? Like you have to like fundamentally just kind of like jump ahead. And then like size of the market, early traction is nice, even if they're just surveys, yes or no, or I'm interested or not interested, or I ran $1,000 worth of Google ads and I got this conversion rate's good. Like data's great to back up your points, like real data, even though like every startup, it's like not real. It's like kind of all fake, but, I think vision, market, founder is important. And I think like some supporting data and research to like support whatever you have that and your belief, for sure. And I think maybe defensible too, like how defensible it is. To be fair, we weren't defensible at all. Now we're incredibly defensible. It's like no investor even is like, they don't even ever ask about defensibility anymore. So like the questions like change as you build your business. Because if we wouldn't have kept doing what we were doing and building this data set and stuff, we probably wouldn't have been as defensible. But now it's just like every investor is like, oh shit. It's like, yeah. So they talk more about like ours is more like churn and like growth and unit economics and gross profit margin, stuff like that. CAC, LTV, stuff like that.
I have another question. So you have pretty few employees for the amount of traction that you have. Can you talk a little bit about like how do you manage people and like you get obviously a lot out of each individual person to be able to keep your team so small.
Yeah, so I think we were talking about this earlier. VC told me this a few weeks ago. We do 4x more volume than our next competitor in terms of like technology enabled, and they have 125-ish employees, and we have 25. We just fundamentally don't hire, and we churn through employees like insane. But like, I don't really care. Like, I think everybody, I think people get like caught up in we've raised money, let's hire tons of people and bloat ourselves. But those are the same people that also are laying off 25% of their workforce like right now. So it's like, for us, we're actually like hiring right now. So it's like, oh, sick. Now great people are coming into the market and we can be opportunistic about getting them for a good price. And I also think like we spend a lot of time together. Like we're kind of like just a family, really. Like we're all a bunch of just drinking dudes that love freight and payments. And I think because of that, we just have like this buy-in together. And COVID was a big part of that, I think. But I think, we just don't subscribe to like hire everybody and grow grow. You need people to grow. It's like, no, you need to work hard and solve problems and build efficiencies, not just like build bodies in there. So yeah, we're pretty little for our size, but I kind of like it. It's better to have. You'd rather have 4 quarters than 100 pennies. So like, we stay pretty lean, and our investors like it too. To be fair, we don't burn a lot of capital, which is great for us.
Did you ever send that professor from Westland a thank you card?
No. She reached out to me like once, and I responded, I think, and just like said, yeah, appreciate it, thanks. And then she reached out to me like again after we raised $78 million, and it's just like, I don't know, it is what it is.
So my real question is, I'd argue that was a good one, but
No, it's a good question. I think about it a lot.
yeah. So in the past, when did you guys? When was the founding date of BasicBlock?
End of 2018-ish. Beginning. We didn't really know what we were trying to do until end of 2019. So right around there somewhere.
Gotcha. So looking back to then, what are some things that you would have changed or done differently, and then maybe some good habits that you wish you would have gotten into at that point?
I would have paid the lawyers more money up front, so we got sued a lot. That's like my like kind of joke, but also real. Like, you should have a good fucking lawyer because everybody will screw you over. And we do have great lawyers now, though they cost $1,500 an hour. It's like unbelievable. That's not a joke. Like, it might be more than that. It's insane. What would I do differently? I do actually fundamentally believe that I'd have paid lawyers more to help protect us early on from like some of the stuff we got fucked by. And I think other than that, I would have found product market fit quicker, but that's like a jaded answer. I don't know that I would change a lot. I think that like me learning those things, like I'm 27 years old, but I would argue that I have the experience of like somebody 45 plus. Like, I've gotten sued. I've had an employee almost kill themselves. Like, I've had like people steal money. Like, the amount of things that I've seen, it's unbelievable. And I think I'm so numb to it now, but I think that going through that in the early days when we didn't have product market fit was way better than going through it now. Because like now it's like I know what I like, I know what I want, like, and like we're very confident who we are. So it's just like get on or get off. We just don't care. So I wouldn't change a lot of that. It was like really good for me to go at the beginning. And honestly, the stakes are little then. Like $5,000 then is like a lot of money, and now it's like $5,000. It's like, dude, I mean, it's like it's nominal now. It's like there's just, and I think that the mistakes get larger, and the money gets larger. Like when we lost $100,000, I was like, shit, like that is the most money I've ever seen in my entire life. We just lost it. And if I told you the amount of money that like I've lost since then on just stupid things, you'd be like, wow, like, but now it's just like all relative. So I think it always becomes relative as you grow. So I think, I don't know, I wouldn't change anything. It's like, it's kind of helped a lot, to be honest. Like, no regrets really. I think if I had any regrets, no, I don't think I would. I think everything that got us to this point was like super needed. A lot of wake up calls, a lot of like just stupid stuff that we were doing as like kids, kind of. So we kind of still are kids too.
Did you have any mentors when you were starting?
Tons. Yeah, I have an insane mentor group. Insane. Like, I'm really, really fucking lucky, honestly. I'm incredibly, incredibly lucky that I can call Jeff Nordhook 24/7, 365, the CEO at Nelnet, and he'll like answer or have a beer with me on like every Friday that I want to. Or when he goes to New York on their jet, he like invites me because I have meetings there. Like that, I like don't take for granted. And I had that earlier on. They weren't like the caliber like Jeff is. But yeah, I found incredible mentors. One of them was my co-founder, Brett Byman. He was my mentor at the beginning, and then now he's my co-founder. He's kind of like the dad of the group, and just make sure I like don't go to jail and our bills are paid. And he does a great job of that. And I think like now it's tougher, a little tougher. so like as you grow, you outgrow mentors, and that's totally fine. I've outgrown tons of them. You outgrow investors too. That's totally fine. So yeah, I think like I had a good group of them. I think how I sourced those was, I don't know. I think part of it is like I was going to do it with or without them. And I think there was some like attribute that they were like, I want to help, like I can help you. And then it just slowly started kind of like happening. And I always like, I don't care who you are. I just like treat you as like one of my college friends, like getting beers, doing whatever. And I think that there's like something to be said about that for like mentors as well. Like the best conversations I've had with Jeff have been like at Occidental when we probably both had like 15 beers. So it's like, those relationships that you build are really solid, I think. And I'm really grateful for those for sure. They're hard to find though. Good ones are hard to find.
So, you have the background in knowing about Bitcoin and blockchain technology early on. How much do you think that your success has been due to you leveraging technology in a space that maybe isn't already doing that?
Yeah, so we don't actually, misconception, we don't actually use any blockchain at all anymore.
You did it first?
We did at first, yeah. Which is completely a waste. No offense. Sorry, Grant. I honestly think it was just right time, right place, and also a little bit of hype. So like we got caught up in the hype and people wanted to talk to us because we were working in a sexy new technology, but like, and that helped us progress. But then, it's like you just do whatever it takes to get to the next stepping stone, right? Like I think at one point we were a document scanning company because like people are buying document scanning for us. We're like, great, fuck it. All right, we'll sell document scanning to truckers. And then we'd always want to get into payments. And then like next thing you know, it's like, now the wild part about this is the vision and like some of the statements that probably people would have crucified me for early on are all true now. Like I used to say we're going to give our software away for free and my business partners would be like, absolutely not. Like we are never going to do that. That's the stupidest thing in the world. Now our software's free. So like the fundamentals of like some of the crazy statements I made are probably true, but like how we got there was not like linear at all. It's like, all right, we just got to go this way because people are giving us money and we need money to survive, and investors at least see revenue and money and like they see we're going to eventually get here, but we're like going this way and we're going to eventually get there. So I think like at the moment it was just like a good opportunity for us to carve ourselves out as somebody in a technology that people want to learn about. That was great. And, Airbnb says like if you don't launch or if you launch and nobody notices, just like launch again. I think Airbnb launched like 5 times. So like, we probably launched, I don't know, 2 or 3 times. Who knows? And we'll probably do it again, right? Like, who knows? And we go banking. Now we're going to be the bank. Like we're not a factoring company, we're a bank, right? So it's like, we'll launch again as a bank. So who knows? I think it's just like right time, right place. And just a little bit of hype. It was good timing.
When you were first starting, how much equity were you comfortable giving away?
It's a great question. If I would have known what I do now, I would have given fractions. That's an incredible question and one that has cost me millions of dollars, straight up. Like I can't even put into this is like a very real conversation. I do wish that we weren't recording, but the
Answer again afterwards.
yeah. So I think as the CEO, you should. It's always based on the timing and what you need, right? So like as a CEO, I wasn't technical. Now I'm pretty technical, but I need a technical co-founder, and those are hard to find, right? So like I had to give up, decent percent to get that. I would say that the CEO going into the seed round should own probably close to somewhere around 75 to 80%. It's like what I would say. If you're having trouble raising, maybe 65, 70. But I wouldn't go lower than that in the first round, probably is what I'd say. So like when you're first building up the team, you probably got like 25-ish% to play with. It's probably like a fair amount, to be honest. Hopefully that answers your question.
Speaking of equity, how do you handle employee stock option plans?
Yeah, we're super aggressive on that. So like we actually have like I think our employee stock option plans is something I like honestly care more about than like my own equity, truthfully. I do a lot of time like educating our employees like pretty closely on what they have and what it means and what the strike price is and the exercise and all these types of things. So we have like a massive pamphlet that we built out to where like they get their options and it's like laid out very clearly to them. And then like my business partner has a one-on-one with them and walks them through all of it. We actually stole it from Carta. It's online. So Carta has like this incredible thing online that they do with their employees. It's like really great. So we use that as a template. We used it and like made it ours. But yeah, it's like so we have like some new employees starting on Monday. Like the first week, like there will be at least a solid day in that week where it's like employee stock options and understanding what you have and like what that actually means. Cause I think, a lot of employees don't realize like, our base stock options wildly enough are 2,500, which is like a shitload. And it doesn't matter if you like pay, if you are an assistant all the way up to like, you're a VP and director, like, you're going to get 2,500 options as of today. But like, those are really aggressive options. And I think but I also like am famous for saying we won't do 401ks. I'm like, if you're here for a 401k, you just don't understand the value of stock. So like, there's other things that like we won't do, but we have incredible benefits, those types of things. So, yeah, employee stock options are like really, really, really something I care a lot about.
Could you share how much, like, do you have 10%?
Yeah, for sure, 100%. An investor will require that, at least 10%. So, and the crazy part about it is every single round you go through, that pool gets sized up to 10% as well. So yeah, we have a standing 10%, and as we raise the next round, another 10% will get carved out for those, and everybody gets equally diluted. So all the investors do as well. So yeah, we hold at a solid 10% for employee stock option pool. And we try to use all of it up to the next raise. That's we try to do that as close as we can because we're going to get it diluted anyway. So like right now we're pretty damn close right now. But like I said, we're about to kind of close another round right now quietly. So it'll kind of get raised up a little bit.
So typically the last question that we always ask, one of our core values is giving first for Startup Grind. How can this startup community help you as a founder, as a company?
Honestly, I think just like keep building great startups in Nebraska is honestly all I care about. I don't really, no offense. I can probably help you more than you can help me at these stages. And I'd be happy to give my time to like give feedback on a deck or an idea or just riff about it. And if I can get investors interested, like I will make intros. Sometimes it's a little tougher to do that. I do angel invest also occasionally, not that much, but I do sometimes. So yeah, I think like my kind of thing would be like, yeah, use me as a resource and just keep building great companies, and I'll try and help.
Fantastic. Can we have a round of applause, please?